it's sort of in between in the sense, yes, we are having a live animal leaving the mother. It is a live birth. But the distinction between ovoviviparous and viviparous is more one of how is the youngster being fed, how is it obtaining nutrients while it is inside the mother. So normally, true viviparity, there would be some mechanism for the mother to supply nutrients to that developing offspring from her own body. Now take a mammal for example, that's going to be the placenta. And there are other ways in which mammals can do something similar. Right? In other words, the youngster can have some tissue that is in intimate contact with maternal tissues that allows it to obtain some nutrients. Ovoviviparous indicates that most of the energy, though, that is being used by that developing young comes from the egg, comes from the yolk of the egg. So there's not a hard and fast rule here how much has to come from the yolk before it's called ovoviviparous as opposed to viviparous. Right? So there's a continuum between those. But the implication is both have live birth. Viviparous, essentially all of the nutrients are coming directly from the mother's system, whereas in ovoviviparous, a substantial amount is coming from the yolk of the egg. So those of you that took comparative anatomy and we dissected the shark, those sharks are really ovoviviparous. You can cut them open, you can find a developing young fish on the inside of the mother in her uterus, but then there's a ping-pong-sized ball of yolk that's attached to that developing offspring. And that's where it's getting most of its nutrients from. All right, so three major modes. Okay. The apodins. The apodins are mostly viviparous or oviparous. I'm sorry, mostly viviparous or ovo. So majority, perhaps 75%, have live birth. About 25% are going to be egg-laying or oviparous. Males have a copulatory organ. In effect, it's just the lower end of its cloaca. Did we define cloaca in here?
Sure, right?
Yep. It is the Latin word for sewer, and it's good because that helps you remember. In many animals, let's see, this is my digestive tract, this is my urinary tract, and this is my reproductive tract. They all join together inside the body so that you have one tube in common through which the products of all three of those systems will flow. That, by definition, is a cloaca. So among mammals, in the monotremes, we still have a cloaca, for example. Birds have a cloaca, or reptiles have a cloaca. Just about everything else does have one. They have a single external opening for all three systems. So, male apodins have a copulatory organ. They are able to extrude part of the cloaca and then place that inside the cloaca of the female for the passage of sperm. So, do you think they're going to have internal or external fertilization?
Internal.
Right. All right, so as far as we know, and there's not a lot known about many of these species, we have internal fertilization in all the apodins. We have internal fertilization that occurs. Most of them are viviparous or ovoviviparous, but some are still egg layers. All right, and many of the things that I'm going to say, we're going to compare that then with the other groups. So most of the oviparous have aquatic larvae, so that 25% that are oviparous have aquatic larvae. But most of the others are going to have terrestrial eggs with direct development. What do we mean by direct development? So just think of your normal way of picturing a frog. Frog lays an egg, it turns into a tadpole. That's the free-swimming aquatic larvae. That will then metamorphose into an adult. So that is what the oviparous apodans will do. They will have that aquatic larvae that will metamorphose into the adult. But others bypass that larval stage. So all of the changes that take place internally take place in the egg itself. So that allows them then to have eggs that are laid on land. You can have direct development occurring inside the egg, bypassing the need for that aquatic larval stage. Okay. So these are the oviparous animals. Obviously, with the ovoviviparous or viviparous, what came out was a miniature adult. So you're not having any need for an aquatic larval stage or direct development. You did have direct development, but you were still inside your mother, not inside the egg. Right?
So then ovoviviparous would be for the terrestrial egg laying?
So terrestrial egg laying would be oviparous.
Oh, just oviparous.
Right. Ovoviviparous and viviparous, what comes out is the miniature adult. It's a live birth. Right? No larval form. Right. Salamanders. Most salamanders, in contrast, are oviparous. They are egg-laying animals. And in fact, there's only 2 or 3 species that are known to be ovoviviparous and only a couple that are known to be viviparous. So of all the species of salamanders in the world, over 95% are egg-laying animals. Well, how do they fertilize their eggs? External fertilization is rare. So external fertilization being where the female releases the eggs into water, the male releases his sperm into the water, and you get fertilization. That's rare. It's primitive. Right? So it's the ancestral state. It's found in 2 families, one of which you know. I don't know the other one. Cryptobranchidae. Who's the Cryptobranchidae?
The hellbender?
Yeah, hellbenders. Okay, so hellbenders have external fertilization, the primitive mode of fertilization. Most salamanders then, except for hellbenders and that one other family, are going to have internal fertilization. They have internal fertilization, but no salamander has a copulatory organ. In fact, their mode of fertilization is unique among the terrestrial vertebrates. They, instead of relying on a copulatory organ for the transfer of that sperm, are going to rely on a spermatophore. Spermatophores they have a shape like this, broadly speaking. So you have a broad base, you come up, and there's something like that. So it is a gelatinous structure, and on top of that gelatinous structure, you have a cap of sperm. Now these things are typically 2 to 10 millimeters in height, 2 to 10 millimeters in diameter at the base. It varies from species to species and is somewhat species specific. So a very good herpetologist can tell you what species of salamander made a spermatophore by looking at its structure. Just to show you some examples. That's handout 27. But right across the top there are some different kinds of spermatophores. So the structure is somewhat similar, but there are differences among the different groups. Now, most of the spermatophore, all of this base part, is manufactured by glands in the cloaca that are called the cloacal glands. So a lot of times you can sex your amphibians from the outside, your salamanders from the outside, by looking whether or not there's a swollen area down near the cloaca, because that is this well-developed cloacal gland in the male. So it's going to secrete the material that forms the bulk of the spermatophore. Once it's secreted, it quickly gels. Right? So it comes out as a liquid, but there's chemical changes that take place, and it forms a gelatinous matrix. This upper part actually takes on the form somewhat of the male's cloaca. It's almost like a mold of the male's cloaca, because it's gelling inside while he's putting this spermatophore on the bottom of a pond or on a log underneath the water, something along those lines. In addition, there are things called pelvic glands that are higher up in the cloaca. These are going to secrete a whitish substance that it contains polysaccharides, and it mixes with and holds the sperm in place so that that sperm just doesn't dribble down and off into the water. All right, so what does this get you? We're talking about fertilization, internal fertilization of female salamanders. Well, salamanders all have courtship behavior. So in that pond, the male will go through dances and other motions trying to convince the female that she really wants that spermatophore. And if he convinces her through his courtship behavior, she will go over to the spermatophore, place her cloaca down on top of it, and remove the sperm. That sperm then gets stored inside the female, anywhere, let's see, from a few hours ambystoma up to more than 2 years in some true salamanders, Salamandra genus. They're stored in a structure that's called a spermatheca. And the spermatheca is homologous to the male pelvic gland. Right? So in the male, it forms the pelvic gland that secretes the substance that mixes with the sperm and holds it in place. In the female, that same tissue turns into a storage place for sperm, the spermatheca. Right? So she now has the sperm inside her. They are stored in her spermatheca. When she ovulates, the egg is going to come down through the cloaca, because remember, they've only got the one opening. The egg comes down through the cloaca. The sperm are in the spermatheca. They all get together inside the cloaca, and fertilization occurs internally. She then releases that fertilized egg into the water. So they're oviparous. She's releasing a fertilized egg. Right? She's releasing an egg, period. And it happens to be fertilized because they have internal fertilization, even though they don't have any copulatory organ. It's a unique way of doing sex among the vertebrates. Okay, so as we said, practically all salamanders are oviparous. Most will have an aquatic larval stage, although some do have direct development. I don't know if I had it in the course pack who does, but one major group with direct development are the Plethodonid salamanders, the Plethodonidae. So these animals can lay their eggs, some of them can lay their eggs on land, let's say in a rotting log or something like that, a very moist environment. And then what will hatch out of the egg is not a tadpole. Instead, what hatches out of the egg is a miniature little salamander.